I hear a lot of people saying, how can COVID-19 be racist? It's a bug. Like, what are you talking about? That's not true. You're right. COVID-19 is not racist. This little sucker don't care if you're brown, if you're black, if you're white, rich, poor. It's an equal opportunity killer, okay? But unfortunately, people in black and brown communities, and especially black, have outcomes, right, that are different. We are dying more from getting COVID-19. We are ending up in the ICU and the emergency room in higher numbers. So that is what we are talking about. The outcomes of being infected by COVID-19 vary by race, basically.
The virus is neutral, but it's not impacting a neutral and equitable society. So the outcomes, of course, are not going to be even.
Exactly. Well said.
Well said. Well said. We've been spending about an hour talking about this, and particularly from the perspective of African American people and people of African descent. Anja, you've been a little quiet. I was wondering how you feel as a European woman in this conversation. Are you feeling? Yeah. What are you feeling?
I feel like, the people of color do have their voice, and I want them to be heard, right?
Well, we want you to be heard too. This is a brave space, and this is what we're about here. Yeah. I'm
actually thinking whether there is any how to actually address the analogies of, we constantly go through different fights. So what happened to me recently is we had a conversation about feminism, which stands basically for fighting for the equality between men and women. And having these conversations, it became very clear to me that not all the cultures are treating their women the same way. So for example, the southern you go in Europe, if you go to Italy, there's a mother figure that is a big figure. Everybody looks upon their moms. If you curse their mom, that's probably the biggest curse that you can use. Same goes for Trinidad, at least that was my experience. Women are treated differently. They're praised. They're being constantly empowered by their men. And that's a completely different approach than here what's happening. And what's happening is that women try to fight for their freedom, fight for their equality. And because the equal position comes with a fight, it's never going to be similar as if somebody actually empowers you and supports you on your way to that positioning. And I think that this is the analogy that might be very much reflected in a fight that people of color are now having and going through. Instead of being empowered in their equalities, they're just left alone in their fight for being equal in the society. So it's always going to be us against whomever it is on the other side, because we perceive it as a fight. And even when I'm being addressed like, how do you feel? Because we're here fighting. So you either join our fight or, you're on the opposite side by default, because we are talking about the ism, because this is a movement, because this is a fight. This is a huge, it's,
And people are coming at it, like you said, you're coming at it from a different perspective. And the Caribbean is a very matriarchal society in a way. The Afro-Caribbean, they descend from indigenous people that had a strong matriarchal basis. In addition to the experience we had in the Caribbean, ended up with a lot of households being headed by a woman. Because broken families, men were either transient or killed or missing, and the same thing in the United States as well. Yeah. So there is, a certain elevation of women, but within that mother role, where our fight feminism-wise is mostly concentrated, there is a lot of suppression in certain areas of sexual power, financial power as well, of women being able to have that, and of course the sexual relationships with men, and the violence and the possessiveness and the ownership. There's a lot of generational trauma that comes to a head there that informs that. But in the Caribbean, women outnumber men in the universities. We have a fairly well representation of women in parliament, and St. Lucia, for example, was recognized as the third most country with the most women in upper management, senior and upper management, and so on. So it's
definitely.
yeah.
So from what what I'm gathering here is that we need those that hold power. We need allyship. Yes, we need them to say, listen, the society works best when equity is the normative practice, and we can, receive and give this power as it needs, because sometimes it needs to be X, need to be Y, but it's okay. It's not X holding on to power.
Power is a complex system in a society in itself.
Right.
It's interesting because when we were speaking about COVID-19 and how there's these differences and how, for example, people of color are now getting sicker and sicker, even though before there was even a concept that, Black people don't get sick. Like, when I heard that, like,
there was
that rumor. Like, why would that even be the case? I would really need to have a very strong confirmation from a scientist or something.
I hear you. Okay, I will look like a crackpot. So
go ahead. No, this is good.
What I'm now thinking, it's not really just the connection to the color. That might be very early on element that influenced the whole development of how we formed these differences between us. But I now am hearing that there is like a fight between poor and rich. Those in power that actually have all the information and have all the access. And now we're here like being in a corner, the middle class and the poor people, and we don't really know what's happening, and we don't know how to actually, I don't know, even react to what's happening to us. We're like, oh yeah, the medicine is coming and this is our plan. Like how we are going to tackle COVID-19, we're gonna wait for the rich people to actually come up with a medicine and tell us who gets the medicine and who not.
The vaccine.
Yeah.
Vaccine, yeah. And I'm like, really? That's our plan?
And in homogeneous societies like yours, Anja, it is class. That is where the vulnerabilities come in. Class.
Does Slovenia have a big class issue?
No, we're very much just equal. We barely even have like the rich class and the middle class. I'd say that the middle class is pretty much what we have. That's a normal. Even if you take a look at the charts from all the states from Europe, we're in the very middle of it. So we're like the best testing area for getting to know what the middle actually wants.
And and Slovenia is not Scandinavia, and I'm not saying that, but a lot of Scandinavian countries have that similar sort of society, a homogeneous sort of society. So it's very fascinating.
Equal wealth distribution.
I mean,
in societies like ours in the Caribbean and in the USA,
and the UK, class is very much linked to outcomes.
Ethnicity.
Yeah.
And outcomes. So class is a factor. So there's an economic factor, and then class is very much linked to ethnic other correlations as well, and that is why the conversation went the way it did.
I hear you, but the UK people would tell you that the UK people that I know, and they say no, it's not on race at all, and it is class. And I have to say that there does seem to be, if you are recognized of a particular class, the race issue, the ethnicity issue does not seem to operate similarly. I mean, well, maybe I have a little privileged experience here in my bubble here, but that may not be true. I'm not arguing it. Just
but you need to look at
correct, Margaret, because it's never one thing.
Yeah.
It's always multifactorial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You have to remember that. It's always a combination. And the thing about that is why I love this whole concept of the social determinants of health, because it's not standard across the board. Because the social determinants of health in Trinidad and Tobago will be different from the social determinants of health in the UK, in the USA, right? So every country's particular social and cultural conditions impact health outcomes in a totally different way.